Hello and welcome. You're watching a pre-budget special Budget of Hope, an initiative by ICICIdirect.com. And today on this conversation with me, one of India's renowned and very well-known economist, Madan Sabnavis, the chief economist at CARE Ratings. Thank you very much, Madan, for joining us on this conversation today. I want to begin by asking you to respond to what the economics survey is talking about, a V-shaped recovery. Do you buy into that claim?
See, I think, Siddharth, statistically speaking, it is a V-shaped because we are talking of a decline in growth of 7.7% in 2020-21. So any kind of an improvement into a positive territory was very much expected. And coming to a number of around 11% is not really unreasonable. So therefore, it does look that there is an all-time high kind of growth rate which we are achieving. But I think one must be a bit cautious while interpreting this number because this is because of a low base year. We should remember that my GDP was valued at around 145 lakh crores in 1920. And then we have fallen by 7.7. So we go somewhere into the region of around 134, 135 lakh crores. And now we'll probably be moving towards 147, 148, 149 lakh crores. So it's not exactly as an exciting kind of a V. Yes, statistically it is V-shaped, but otherwise it would be a very moderate growth over the 1920 number. So it is a positive number, something which we need to be happy about. But are we really going back to the times when we had growth of around 7 to 8%? The answer is probably not. And I think somewhere in the economic survey itself, it's mentioned that it'll be a couple of years for us to actually get back towards the so-called pre-COVID normal. So we may have to wait a little longer before we reach that situation.
That's a good point about the pre-COVID normal. And for our audience who would like to understand this in sort of more real terms with regard to their livelihood, future jobs, businesses, the pre-COVID normal, Madan, in any case was already on a downward slide. So my question would be, given that the budget is now just around the corner and we all put in a lot of expectations into a budget, and that's a separate discussion whether we should do that. But nevertheless, given the backdrop, is there ever going to be hope, at least in the next 3 to 5 years, of going back to even the pre-COVID growth that India saw last somewhere around 2015, Madan?
No, I think definitely there is a lot of hope that we will reach the pre-COVID levels. In fact, when I was talking of the pre-COVID levels, it was not the immediate time, because when you're looking at 1920, we had the lockdown coming in the last week of March. Now, typically, if you look at corporate India, a lot of activity happens in the last week of March because everybody runs to meet their targets. And there is a tendency for bump up in activity. That obviously did not take place, and we probably had one of the lowest growth rates, at least ever since we had this new methodology of using 2011-12 as the base year, and we have ended up with a number of 4%. It was 4.2, and I think today the revision has come that it's 4%. So there was already a slowdown, and what you rightly said, yes, we have not really been at our normal capacity, say for the last 2 or 3 years. So the problem all goes back to saying that consumption has not been as vibrant as what it should be. Earlier, we had a problem of droughts, and once we were out of the droughts and we had good years, we realized that the demand coming from the rural side, the demand coming from the urban side, did not quite really shape up the way we wanted. So there was always a consumption problem, and I think that's when we had this controversy about saying that are we having growth without enough jobs being created? So and I think that's a very pertinent point, because when you're talking of COVID, we're talking of the lockdown, a lot of jobs have been lost. You look at what's data, you get to know that people are still out of employment. People have not returned to work. The migrants haven't returned to work. So this will be a pressing problem. But this said, I think when we are talking of, say, another 2 years, I would say that 21-22 would, of course, be statistically a good year. Maybe after that, we would be probably in the 6 to 7% range of growth. And after that, so we're talking of 2 years down the line, we could really think of getting back to a 7.5 to 8% growth rate, which actually creates jobs, which is, I think, the prerequisite for sustained growth.
Okay, I have 2-3 questions in follow-up from your answer, and I'm going to run through them very quickly. The first, and this concerns me a lot, is there a risk that the policy establishment, the decision makers, would take a great satisfaction from the statistical view and say, listen, let us continue to be fiscally conservative in the new financial year. And growth is coming back on its own, so we don't need to do too much to boost the economy.
I think this is a very pertinent question because if we really do believe that this 11% growth is a great growth number, there is a fear that, okay, I need to become fiscally more conservative and let me go along that fiscal conservative path and try and move towards the 3% fiscal deficit number, which may not be achieved in 1 year, but definitely maybe 2-3 years, we could be moving towards the 3% number. This kind of a risk still remains. But another interesting point which came out in the economic survey was that they have been quite critical about the global credit rating agencies, saying that we should not be giving too much of weight to them because we deserve a much higher rating. Now, the fear is that if we actually pursue this particular thought, then we may just say that, look, at this point of time, we need not talk about fiscal austerity. It does not matter what the fiscal deficit ratio is. In fact, again, the economic survey says we need to spend on health, we need to spend on poverty alleviation, on basic needs. So it's just possible that the government may decide to go in for a bit of extravagance in the sense that we could be having a fiscal deficit ratio closer towards the 6 to 7% mark. That's a possibility. But my sense is that if we look at the way in which this particular government has behaved since 2014, ever since it's taken over power, they have been looking towards fiscal consolidation. And I think the government is very, very conservative when it comes to spending. I don't think they would be loosening the purse strings too much. They could have done it last year, which they did not. I think that's a very critical point. We always felt that the government should have been spending more, they should have been giving tax cuts, we should have had refunds. You and I should have been getting refunds also. But that is something which the government desisted from doing. Again, the economic survey has sort of used that as a positive to say that we are the only government which took supply side steps rather than demand side measures, unlike the Western countries. So I don't think that fear is there. But going by the economic survey, you get a feeling that maybe the government should spend more, but I don't think that will be the policy pursued on Monday.
That's a good point, because an academician's exercise and an academician's wish list we have seen is very different from what the so-called real practitioners end up doing. Point number 2, it's mostly agreed that this recovery has been driven by profits and not by jobs or wages. And I think this is the biggest concern. When do you expect the recovery to actually impact jobs and wages in a positive sense?
See, I think it would depend upon where the top line improves. Because what we have seen in Q2 and probably also in Q3 from the initial results which are out, I think companies have made their profits by going in for cost cutting. And one of the segments one of the items which have been cut quite sharply has been the wage bill. So this has been through layoffs, cutting salaries, not hiring more people, deferring payments. So this is not really a good sign from the point of view of consumption. So this is something which needs to get reversed. But I think the corporate sector will do it only at a point of time when it sees its top line increasing. Now, Q3 will be very critical because we still don't have all the results coming in. And right now, it still looks as if it's been more cost cutting leading to profits rather than higher growth in sales. I think that particular equation will have to change for what you're saying to really happen.
Therefore, my next question, what happens to private investment? If our large companies and investors continue to be fiscally conservative in that sense, Madan, how will private investment go up? Will it at all go up?
No, actually, I'm not too sanguine about that, Siddharth, because even the last 3-4 years, we have seen the gross fixed capital formation rate actually coming down. And why does this rate come down? There are 2 reasons for it. Earlier, we had a case of saying that infrastructure investment wasn't going up because people didn't want to get into infrastructure. There was also this overhang of NPAs, which was primarily in the infrastructure sector. Similarly, we had surplus capacity in most industries. So the capacity utilization rate, unfortunately, the only indicator we get is from the RBI studies, the surveys which they carry out. And we don't have any number for the second quarter, but the first quarter it came very, very low. But let's assume it comes to a region around 65 to 70%. which was what the rate was before the pandemic set in, it's not a good enough rate. So I need to have that consumption going up. So we go back to saying I need to create more jobs, I need to generate more income, I need to have more spending taking place. Only then will industry realize that their capacity utilization rates are reaching the optimal level. And in India, it is felt that I need something like 78 to 82% before I go in for fresh investment. And that's not going to happen in the next financial year too. So I think we'll have to wait for a longer period of time. It's going to be a very slow recovery. It has to be driven by job creation. It has to be driven by higher incomes being generated at all levels, not just at the higher income levels. It has to be at all levels. And in terms of infrastructure, I think the government needs to take lead, the central government, the state governments. State governments have been cutting down on the capital expenditure in order to meet their fiscal targets. I don't know what's the situation for the current financial year, that is for 2021. But the government normally leads, and I think the private sector follows suit. So I think the central government needs to be a bit more aggressive. I don't know if they have the legroom for it, but that would be an important thing to see on Monday.
I'll follow up with one more question, which is that would you agree with the contention that this is not the moment of time in our economic history as a nation to be worried about overspending, but we should be worried about underspending and undershooting what should be our actual growth rate?
No, actually, I would agree with you there, Siddharth. But again, I'll go back to saying, if you look at the ideology of the government, they could have done anything they wanted to in 2021 and nobody would have questioned it. Okay, we had this golden opportunity and we're still going to end up with a nasty fiscal deficit of 8% center, maybe 4% states. But I think at this point of time, if we had really said that I'm going in, giving all the tax breaks, I'm going to spend more, make sure that that overall consumption increases, it would have worked well. The very fact that you went in for a conservative route, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just tells us that practically speaking, expecting them to turn around this particular financial year may not really happen. It would be more towards fiscal consolidation.
Okay. The economic survey did tell us some things about the scarring that has happened on account of COVID, but if the Indian economy were to be likened to a human body, then we could probably say that there were ailments that were pre-existing COVID also. And I don't think one budget can provide all the medicine, and you can't provide a medicine that has to be administered over 5 days on a single day. So that's my experience as a reporter, having covered probably 23, 24, 25 budgets, including some interim ones. So a couple of other points, because I think we both you and me have underscored the point that government spending has to be higher and will actually be a crucial component of the recovery before the private cycle kicks in. I want to ask you for your top 3 picks in terms of your expectations from the budget, which can realistically drive meaningful growth.
In fact, I don't expect the budget to be a driver of growth, because I do take the budget to be a financial statement of an entity, which happens to be the government. It's an income, expenditure, profit and loss account. I think we have too much of expectations, and governments over the last 2 decades or so, they have created this kind of expectations. In fact, I would say since 91, 92, the budget has become a kind of a policy document to talk about every possible thing. But at the end of the day, if you look at the numbers and say that, do I have the money to actually become a kind of a game changer for the economy? The answer is probably no. Because lots of your expenditures, you look at your interest payments, you look at your subsidies, you look at other essentials, like we're saying at the farm sector, after all these, what we saw in Delhi, their farm laws, etc., there will have to be some measures to placate that entire constituency. You really don't have too much of money. So to my mind, in case you have a nominal increase in, say, capex, and you adhere to it, I think that would be number 1 thing for them to do. Number 2 would be to actually go ahead as much as is possible, or actually as much as necessary, to spend on health. Because that is the nagging feeling which we have, is that at some point of time, the center may say that the vaccination is not its problem. It's going to be the problem of the states, or maybe all the so-called higher income groups, people can fend for themselves. So that so-called free vaccination drive may not be there. But I think we need to spend not just in terms of vaccination, but also in terms of R&D, because that is something which we need to make very firm. And I think the third part will be, of course, there would be a case of having more reasonable numbers for disinvestment. Because disinvestment has always been, I think, an Achilles heel for us, because we talk of a number, it never gets achieved. And I think the reason is because I think it's used as a balancing figure for the budget. I have so much of income, I have so much of expenditure, I want to borrow so much, balance, let's put it into disinvestment. And hopefully, I think the government should have had plans exactly of what I want to do with Air India, what I want to do with BPCL, what I want to do with LIC, so that come April, I should be able to go in for the disinvestment immediately. Otherwise, having targets like 2 lakh crores or even 1 lakh crores doesn't really make too much of sense. If at the end of the day, I'm not able to achieve it, or I get one PSU to buy into another PSU, we have seen that even the ETFs which came up have not really done well, and I don't think there'll be too much of interest today if I'm going to have any more of these ETFs. So I think a concrete plan to make sure that a reasonable disinvestment target is set and achieved. I think these would be the 3 things which I would be looking at.
And are you hoping to hear anything on a bad bank finally?
I think a bad bank will be more in words, but I don't think there's going to be any direct allocation as such, because there is bank capitalization, there's a creation of a DFI and a creation of a bad bank. All 3 are required. Now, you need to put money to create a bad bank. And I think bad bank is nothing else but escapism. I mean, we haven't been able to solve the problem with ARCs. So even the IBC, if the IBC is strict, we don't want it to be strict. So I think these are things which probably will come in the budget speech, but it may not be any direct allocation for it as such. I think the priority will have to be bank capitalization, creation of a DFI, third thing, bad bank. The bad bank is just kicking the can, we're not really solving the problem.
Quite honestly, you can have a very nice, feel-good discussion about the macro economy, but when you come to specifics, it is when the reality hits you even harder. And those are some of the points that we discussed. But Madan, as always, time doesn't allow you to take everything in one conversation. So I'm going to thank you here for your time today.
Thanks a lot, sir.
We've got a good overview from you on the union budget and what to expect and what perhaps not to expect. And hopefully after the budget, we can perhaps do a post-mortem of what was done and what was not. As always,
That would be interesting.